Welcome to Marketing, Media, and Money, your go-to podcast for proven profitable strategies, secrets, and resources from industry experts and global influencers to help you scale your business, shorten your learning curve, and stand out in a crowded, noisy marketplace. Here's your host, award-winning marketing and media strategist and international speaker, Patty Farmer.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Marketing, Media, and Money podcast. And I am excited because we are going to talk about something that I don't think everybody talks about all that often. You're hearing a lot of people talking about podcasting, whether it is your own podcast or whether you are guesting on podcasts. But what you're not hearing them talk about is how do you create your own ecosystem so it works for you, right? How it works for you, not just to get you more visibility, how to get an international presence, really, and how to make money at it, because really that's the name of the game, right? So today, I want to tell you all about my guest because I am really excited. She's coming in all the way from London, coming in virtually all the way from London. So let me tell you a little bit about her. So Kay Suthar, CEO and founder of Make Your Mark podcast agency. She isn't just another podcasting expert. She's revolutionizing the podcasting space by integrating AI and Web3 technologies, pioneering a unique approach to community building. It's about creating the perfect ecosystem around your podcast that will not only turbocharge your visibility on a global scale, but turn your podcast into a money-making machine. With a focus on future-proofing, Kay coaches on revolutionizing the way podcasts are launched, produced, and experienced. Guesting strategies, maximizes episode content, and leads the charge in building decentralized, resilient communities. So I have to tell you, I can't wait to dive into all of that. So Kay, thanks so much for being here with me, my friend.
Oh my goodness, I'm so excited to be here. And I got to say, I love the fact that you say ecosystem and not ecosystem. I got to remember that.
Yes, it is ecosystem, right? Is it supposed to be ecosystem? I always say ecosystem. Tomato.
In the UK, we say ecosystem, but I'm like, okay, you're in the US, it's ecosystem.
Maybe. That's what we're talking to. But I have to tell you, Kate, before we dive in, just to give some background to the audience, I met Kay almost a year ago on a podcast cruise that we were both on. And I have to tell you, with all the people that were there, instantly, her and I connected and bonded and spent a lot of time there together. And then after we met there, we both went to a podcast conference, Podfest, and we had a lot of time that we spent there. And as a matter of fact, I have to tell you, the highlight of that trip for me was the breakfast that you and I had together. That was like 4 hours.
Yes, it was an amazing conversation. And the thing is, if we didn't have to go, we will probably still be sitting there at the diner, gone through lunch, dinner, everything.
It was so good. So good. I was like, it was one of the times where I thought, man, I wanted to just take my phone. I was like, could we record this? Because it was so good. I mean, the nuggets that we were sharing, I have to tell you, if we would have recorded that, that would have been like a workshop, masterclass, or a private podcast or something that we would have done right there.
Absolutely. No, it was an amazing conversation. And I felt like we were just riffing off each other as well, right? Because of your expertise and my expertise is like, okay, like what am I learning from you? What are you learning from me? And just like riffing. And it just went on and on and on. And it just turned into this huge, big thing, right?
I know. I've been like so waiting to get you on the show. So I got to tell you, so for those of you listening, I mean, it's like you're going to be a fly on the wall. Like we're just sitting at that restaurant again, and you all get to be here too. So I hope you have your pen and paper out because we're going to dive right in right now. So here's the very first question I think that they may be thinking when they heard me introduce you, right? So yes, what does creating a podcast ecosystem entail? But what do you mean by integrating AI and Web3 technology? Because I'm sure some of the people listening, they probably do know what AI is, but they may not know what Web3 is. So why don't we start there?
Okay, so we all know about AI and the different tools and everything that have come out in the last couple of years, right? And so we're about integrating a lot of the AI systems to make it a lot more efficient, a lot more productive, and just to make it easier on yourself when producing a podcast, right? And a lot of people are already doing that. They're already implementing a lot of these different tools. But Web3 is the next level of the internet, right? A lot of people are still trying to kind of get their head around it, or some people don't really know about it, not heard of it, but it's where podcasting is going, it's where technology is going, right? And so what we are doing, especially with our own clients, is we're getting them ready for the next revolution of the internet, which is the Web3. And the Web3 is going to be a game changer because you'll be able to implement things like Bitcoin, right? Cryptocurrency, NFTs. Now, I don't want to go into that way too much because I know it's going to go over people's heads right now, but there's a new way of podcasting that's round the corner, and we've got to get ready with that. And we've got to get ready for that. But we've got to start with making sure we understand how to implement different strategies using AIs. So when that new curve comes, we are already ready and we're not going to get left behind.
Which is important. And that's what you mean when you say future proofing, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I think a lot of times what happens is people see what's going on, like when AI first came out, right? And so there's always people like us who are early adopters, right? You know, I know I love being a trendsetter, don't we? But really, sometimes people want to sit around and wait because sometimes things come and go very, very quickly, especially in the marketing space, right?
Absolutely.
And so they want to wait. But then what happens is they wait and watch for so long that then they're trying to play catch up and they're not ready for the next curve to come like you're talking about because they haven't become proficient at what came before, right? You know, so I think that it's really important to find somebody that you could trust that even if you're not there yet, then you have that person who's going to walk beside you, you know, kind of take you through that as you're ready, right? You know, and that's what I really love about you is that because you are ahead of the game. And so that's always something that I think is really important when you want somebody in your trusted inner circle, right?
Oh,
you know, I think that's really
definitely. And so you've got to make sure that you are keeping ahead of the game because we saw what happened when we look back at the pandemic, right? We saw what happened to a lot of businesses that didn't keep up with technology, right? With the way the world was going. And so the way I see that is that's a lesson to be learned. Let's not let that happen to us again or never happen in the future. And let's learn from those mistakes and let's move forward and implement the technologies we need to so we can actually future-proof in every way that we can.
Which is just so important, right?
Yes,
so
definitely.
When you're talking about that podcast ecosystem, ecosystem, right? What does that entail? And could you outline some key practical steps that are necessary for ensuring that your podcast success from launch to global recognition? And what do you mean by a holistic approach? Because I love that you said to me that you take a holistic approach on that. And I think that's really important. So what do you mean by that?
Okay, so first of all, I'm all about, listen, we want visibility. We want people to know us. We want people to know, like, and trust us. The best way to do this is by having a video podcast, right? I'm all about, let's get our faces on screen. Let people know who we are because we are the face of our brands, right? So if you're going to be starting a podcast, then make sure it's a video podcast, right? That's what I'm all about. Now, there's a few reasons why we want to have a video podcast, and that's because you can leverage it in so many different ways when you have a video. And one of the ways that you want to do that is you want to make sure that you can get snippets. Again, you can use AI tools for this, right? Create snippets, put it on social media, right? Turn it into little short reels. You want to put it on stories, right? So all of a sudden, you have a podcast, but now you're on social media. And then to take it further than that, to add to the ecosystem, you want to make sure that you're then creating blogs, right, for each one of your episodes. The reason for this is because a lot of our audience, they learn in different ways. Some are visual, some are auditory, and believe it or not, Patty, some do actually still like to read, right? So we want to make sure that we're catering to as many people as possible to make sure we have a bigger audience. And so you want to turn it into a blog, as well as having it on auditory as well, right? So you'd want to take out the audio from the video and put it up on a podcast. So now you got audio, you got video, and you got it in writing, right? 3 big things. And the other thing you want to do this as many times as possible. Now, you want to have a release every single week, because remember what I was talking about in the diner regards to SEO, right? And when you have your own podcast and you have it on video, right, SEO will blow through the roof organically. And the reason for that is because you will put your video on YouTube, right? And it will go up when it comes to Google ranking, because guess what? Google owns YouTube, right? And so what's going to happen is when people start seeing you on social media, they start hearing you on podcasts, they start seeing your blogs, they're going to do what any natural person does. And they're going to do their research and due diligence and find out if you are the real thing. And where they're going to go to do that is they're going to go to Google and search your name and see what actually comes up. And all of a sudden, you'll have all these videos, blogs, everything coming up all on Google. And that's how you build your authority really quickly through video podcasting.
Okay, good. So I want to kind of deep dive into that just for a few minutes.
Yes.
So video, I probably did 120 of my episodes audio only first before I switched over to video.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so glad that I did. So here's one of the things there's 2 things that people say when we're talking about video and YouTube specifically. Mm-hmm. And since this is your area of expertise, I know that people out there are thinking it. So when you talk about Google, like I know the answer, but maybe they don't, right? So when you're talking about Google owning YouTube, so there's a couple things. So just because you have it on YouTube itself, it's because you really need to optimize that description, right? Mm-hmm. It's what you write in the description and how important that is. So I want you to talk about that, but I'm just going to give you the rest of the question so you can incorporate it in there. And then the other thing is, when you're talking about blogging, would you embed the video in the blog, or would you just put the link to the video to the blog and drive them to YouTube? I know the answer, but again, maybe the audience doesn't. So when you're talking about those 2 things, I think optimizing for SEO and knowing exactly what to do with the video is super important.
Absolutely. I totally agree. So yes, when you want to put it on YouTube, your title, your description, show notes needs to all be optimized. And what that really means, right, is, and this is a quick and easy way of, I guess, explain it to people that are not too sure how to go about it. When you are recording your episode, make sure that the transcripts are recorded too. Okay. Now the transcripts have the keywords that you have used in the video, right, that you will want to add into things like your title, your description, and your show notes. That is what is going to help you in the basic level to optimize your entire podcast, as well as the descriptions. Everything works hand in hand all together, helping you get results and rank higher on Google. Okay. So that is really, really important. In regards to implementing your videos into blogs, absolutely. Absolutely. I would say put the video up on there, right? You can, and then actually there's different ways. You can put the link on there as well. And what you could do with the link, right, is have that actually drive to your YouTube channel, right? Now you can have the video on there. In fact, what I would like to do is say you have a snippet of a video on there, right? Get them intrigued, like, oh my goodness, like this actually sounds like a really awesome episode to watch. And what you do is put a link at the bottom and say, hey, if you want to listen and watch to the rest of the episode, then go here, click on this link. That's what I'll
sure to subscribe and leave a review.
Oh, absolutely. That's a given, definitely, right? So you want to do that, again, because you want the traffic to keep appearing on different kind of pages, different platforms that you're on. Again, when it comes to backlinking, we had this conversation, this hopefully helps all of your, I guess, domains, your digital assets rank on Google as well.
So I think that is really important. So thanks for breaking that down for them. So today I know that we're really going to talk about people who don't have a podcast yet and are thinking about launching one. Maybe they're just guesting so far and they haven't gone and got their own. And then we have people who are listening who are seasoned podcasters. You know, they're seasoned, they have their own of some type. Maybe it's a YouTube, just a YouTube one, whatever the case may be. But we do have some seasoned ones as well. And so we want to make sure that we serve them all. So we're going to start the question with, what are some innovative launch strategies or techniques that can help a new podcast stand out in a crowded market? And then can you share some examples? And then we'll switch over to the seasoned podcasters. So
yes, definitely.
We're not going to forget you.
So if you're just starting out, the number one thing is I feel like people forget that it's a launch, right? It's yet another launch. And so you want to turn that into an event. You want people to get excited. You want to get people know about it. Just like if you had a challenge coming up, a summit coming up, right? You want to brag about it everywhere. And so if you're starting a new podcast, I will start seeding like a month in advance, even further, right? Take people on the journey with you and let them know, you know what, I'm thinking about starting a podcast, right, around X, Y, and Z, right? And put it out on social media, put it out there and get people's thoughts, right? Because people want to be part of the journey. They want to see you grow. And when you have different thoughts like, oh my goodness, what am I going to name it, right? What color should I use? Like what, all these different questions that pop up when you're first starting a podcast, ask your audience. Your audience will tell you exactly what they want, exactly what they want to hear, what they want to see. And at the end of the day, you're going to create a podcast that they're going to absolutely love because you're the one that asked for their advice and they are your listeners. Okay. So you're already going to get them revved up, sitting on the edge of their seat before your podcast is even dropped. Now, the first week that your podcast drops, I always say release at least 6 episodes in that week, right? 6 episodes, because people have been waiting so much for it. You've teased them, right? And told them all these little pieces that you're putting together. And so when it drops, they don't want to listen to one episode. They want to binge listen or binge watch to a bunch of them, right? And so I would always say have 3 going out one day in a week, like a Tuesday, and then the Thursday have another 3 released and let them binge watch, okay? Or binge listen. The other thing that I would like to add to that is you can turn it into a social event as well prior, right? And you can have a bunch of people come to an event, a networking event, and it can be a mixture of people that you had as a guest on your podcast that you've already recorded and new people that come along to actually network. It can be in person or it can be virtual, completely up to you, right? And start networking and bringing the buzz, inviting people to the event, letting them know that this is a podcast event or podcast networking event, right? That's going to be dropped, it's going to be released, and then you're going to be showing them some uncut, some behind the scenes, the people that haven't seen before, some of those episodes so they know what's coming. Again, you want to build that buzz.
So you're building your own watch party.
Exactly. There you go.
We're going to have our own watch party. I love that. That is really great. And I think those are some really good things. I actually saw somebody, a bunch of people actually, and I thought it was kind of cool. They actually did these little teaser videos and, you know, stuff like that. So there's a lot of things that you can do. And I have found personally from a marketing standpoint, when you want people to give you their opinion, a lot of times when people are thinking about it, they're asking themselves the question, if I answer this, are you going to try to sell me something? Right? You know, a lot of times, because people do it on social, right? You know, they act all salesy and they ask these questions. And as soon as you say it, 5 seconds later, they're in your private messages, right? You know, we know. But what I love about this is as soon as you use something like hashtag market research, people love to give their opinion. But now that they know you're just asking their opinion because you're doing research, all of a sudden they're like, oh, well, I'd love to give you my opinion. And they feel real free about doing it because they know you're just doing research. So I think it is really a great way. I know at my live events, every single year at my event, they will say to me, you know what would be really cool, Patty? I'm like, no, tell me what would be really cool. And I would tell you, every single thing that they have ever told me to do has worked. Like every single time. You know, they're like, oh, Patty, it'd be really great if you, you know, waited a couple days and did an alumni event. Oh, that would be good. Oh, Patty, you know, it'd be really great if you added a day on just for speaking. That would be really great. Like, you know, I have done all those things. And so, yeah, your audience will tell you what the next thing is they want. And then when you listen, And if you do it in advance, like you're talking about now, you have time to come up with some offers around it as well for what they said. So when you do it, you actually already have those things in place. So, I mean, I think asking your audience what they want makes a lot of sense. Nobody says you have to do what they say, right?
That's
You know, if it's not right for your business, you're just asking them, you know? So I think that is really good. So I love that. Thank you, Kate.
No worries. So
now let's shift. Let's shift a little. Okay.
All right, let's do it.
Now let's shift to the seasoned podcaster. So can you share some advanced production techniques and tools that will ensure high quality content that resonates with your audience, especially for those looking to elevate their production value, right? You know?
Oh, yes. Okay. So I'm loving this question. Why? Because I'm in the middle of doing something quite special at the moment with my podcast. Now, this is why I say video podcasting, okay? Because you can do so much more. You can leverage it so much more. And so what I am doing, I am creating seasons, okay? My next season is actually called Real Women, Real Talk, right? Ooh. And it's going to be talking about things like, when we're in business as women, we're not just business women. We're wives. We are girlfriends. We're mothers. We're daughters. We're everything combined together, right? Mm-hmm. And so how do we make it work? Because not only are we wearing several hats in our business, but also in our personal lives, right? Mm-hmm. We got double whammy. And then what I'm doing is having these, and I'm calling it a mini series, having these women talk about all aspects of their life, but also turning it into a summit cast. A summit cast is an online summit, right? Where they can come in and watch these episodes for free, right? Now, they're going to be the first ones to actually get access to it. You have a VIP where you get the behind scenes. You'll also get some gifts from all the speakers so you can learn more about them. Like, there's several ways you can do this. And so they'll actually see the episodes, the behind the scenes, get some gifts, and then on the back of that, they'll actually be able to meet all of these speakers that they've got to know, that they've learned so much about at a live summit, right? And so when you do that, there's always going to be this. So you're looking at a sales funnel. This is what the sales funnel looks like, right? Mm-hmm. And there's always going to be ways. People always ask me, how do you make money from a podcast? This is the next level. And what we do is now turning it into like almost like a TV production, right? Where they have all these different seasons, you have the different series, you have all the different people, and eventually at the live event, it's going to be a sofa couch interview of to all the information that they've already learned, what they're doing now, where they've got to, because from the time the episode actually releases to the time you have a live summit, there's probably going to be 6 months to a year between it. So where are they at now and what have they learned?
Which I think is really important too, especially from somebody that's seasoned. So like, I really want the audience to really get what you're saying here. Mm-hmm. So if you're not just as a podcaster, so we can take this strategy she's sharing and kind of think about this. So how many times, if you look in your inbox, have you signed up for something, not because you wanted the thing, but you just wanted to see the funnel, right? How many times as a speaker have you gone and seen somebody that you've actually heard them speak before, but you want to watch the offer? You want to watch how they connect. You want to watch like the process, because that's how you learn the behind the scenes stuff. You know, sometimes, you know, you see somebody, you're like, man, I really wish I knew how they did that. Right. So when somebody's willing to share behind the scenes stuff, it's almost, from a marketing point of view, it's almost like you're pre-selling. Like, you're not selling anything there, but just because they're seeing all that, you're thinking, wow, I kind of want to know that. And I have to tell you, Kay, that every person I have ever hired, right? And I mean like a higher level stuff. Every person I've ever hired, I hire them because I got to see something they were doing. And it wasn't just that I wanted them to coach me. It was that I saw them doing something and I was thinking, wow, the only way I'm going to learn how to do it is to hire them.
Right.
And that has always worked for me. And I think that's probably the best way to hire people, you know, really. Because if somebody's not willing, you know how there's always those people that are like, oh yeah, I'll tell you what I want to tell you, but I'm not going to share. So you want people who are generous like that. That says a lot when people are willing. I mean, my whole magazine of podcasts is I want people on the show that are going to share behind the scenes of what's working now, not 5 years ago, right? Because
Right.
you don't want to know that. We want to know what's working now. So that's why I love having you on the show, because I think what you said right now is super important. I want to make sure that my listeners really get that on how important that really is, because just watching the behind the scenes and all those things, you are learning something. So now when you're thinking, oh, wow, you know what? I think I might want to do that or apply it to something else. Now you're going to be like, you know what? I like the way she did that. And whether that is you got enough or whether they come to you and say, you know what? I'd like to hire you to show me how to do that or do it for me or whatever the case may be. But now you know that they can do it because you've seen it in action.
Right.
Which I think is really important. So I think that point you made right there was gold. That was a super gold nugget there. So I hope everybody got it. So I wanted to make sure I pointed that out to them that was really gold right there.
Yeah. Now, the thing is, when you're a seasoned podcaster, right? Yeah, you are known and you probably have like 100 episodes that are waiting to be released because everybody wants to be on there now. But now it's like, okay, what's the next level? And what I find is that people say to me, when are you having your event? When are you going to do your summit?
Exactly.
When are you doing this? Right? So again, they're telling me what they want, just like they told you what they wanted, right?
Exactly.
And so now that, okay, how can I incorporate video podcasting where I can bring it now into the event world? And I feel like this is it. This is how you do it. So now they're going to have an actual, touch event. I don't know if I'm using the right words, but as in they get to actually see me, right? Not just on a screen, in real life. And again, when it comes to sales and bringing in leads, this is a really good opportunity for them to actually have an opportunity to actually speak with you rather than seeing you on a screen.
And they can ask questions and touch you and feel you. And I think when people get to touch you, it's all about know, like, trust, right? And you can shorten that know, like, trust cycle a lot when people can see you live, whether it's virtually or not. There's virtual and then there's virtual live, right? And so I think that really is important. And I think it shortens your learning curve and increases the sales cycle. In this, you know what I mean? They're a little bit more trusting faster about spending the money when they've seen it in action. They've seen you behind the scenes. They see that you're sharing value, right? So I think that's really important. Really. So thank you so much.
No worries. And I think that people are wanting to have that connection face to face now. I think people are like, okay, we've done the whole screen thing. We get how that works. But now they want to get out there in the real life and be like, okay, I actually want to speak to people now face to face.
Exactly. That's why you're in London and I'm here in Dallas. And that's why at least once a week we're sending each other messages saying, when are you going to be over here in the United States? And when are you going to whatever? So that you're like, Patty, when are you going to be over here? Oh, you're going to be in Italy. Let's see how we can, whatever. Exactly. We want to be in the same space often, right? So I think, that is, really important. But what I'd like to do now is let's step back a moment. Okay. Step back a moment, talk about you. Let's talk about you. Right? So, having a podcast is one thing. Opening a podcast agency is like a whole nother thing, right? So can you share like your podcast to podcast agency journey and, what were some key challenges you faced, right? In the early days, and what did you do to overcome them? And what made you want to start an agency so you could help others?
Oh my goodness. So I didn't have any intentions to starting a podcast agency at all. That was not where I was going with this. And so when I first came about podcasting, it was during the pandemic, right? Because before that, I was in the events and sales industry, right? Which is why I'm so excited to bring sales and events into podcasting now, because they were my roots, right? And so when it was a pandemic and I was like, oh my goodness, I need to do something more, right? Like I can't just sit here at home looking at the four walls. Like you still have to promote. And so I was like, oh, let me try this whole podcasting malarkey that people keep talking about. Right, let's just give that a go. And so I remember when I was speaking to somebody and I was telling them about what I do, what my experience is, and I've traveled all over the world and all this kind of stuff. And she turned around and goes, oh, wow. Right. And I'm like, oh, my goodness, this is going to be a sale. Right. She loves what I just said to her. Right. And then she said, oh, wow, you're the world's biggest secret. And I'm like, hold up. Wait, what? Like, I'm not trying to be a secret. I'm trying to build an empire here. Right. And so that's when I was like, I've got to do something now. I can't just sit here. And so I decided to jump on podcasting, and I first started with guesting, right? I thought, let me see how this goes and let me start guesting on podcasts. And it didn't go very well, Patty, in the beginning. Nobody would interview me. Nobody would say yes. And I was like, what is happening here? Because people are getting on podcasts. Why can't I? And so about 2 to 3 months, I then strategized and used different tactics and then got booked on 100 podcasts in 60 days. Right? Yes. And I was like, oh my goodness. And people were like, oh, how are you doing this? Like, how come you're everywhere? And I was like, oh, that is the course right there. I need to
Don't you love that question, though? I love it when somebody says to me, oh my gosh, Patty, like you're everywhere.
Right?
Like, you've done a good job, because really we're not everywhere all the time, right?
Yeah.
Visible everywhere.
Yes, exactly. And that's what it's all about, making sure that you're visible everywhere, because people then think you're everywhere, right? Mm-hmm. And then so I got on these podcasts, and then next thing was these hosts that were interviewing me were saying, oh, wait, what's the name of your podcast? And I'm like, oh, crap, I don't have one. Okay, let me go create one, right? So are you seeing the pattern here? I wait for people to ask me what they want before I go create it, right? And that's what I did. And so then I was like, okay, let me go create a podcast. And then I started learning all the different components that are needed for a podcast. And then I was like, I don't want to do all of this. I don't want to do all of this, right? And remember, back then, we didn't have all the AI tools that are now available to us today.
Exactly.
And so I started hiring different people to do these different components that's needed for a podcast. And as they were doing them, and I got my podcast up and launched, and they were like, wait, hold on a second. How did you get your podcast up so quickly? And I was like, oh, that's another program right there, right? And so I was like, let's put this whole production program together, right? And actually do it for people, because now I've got a whole team that can do it for people. Right. And so it just kind of came about in a way that I didn't expect it to. I was like, okay, let's do this.
Well, the pandemic was known for the pivot, right? I mean, the pandemic was that's what happened. Like, you did that and then you pivoted, right? And
yes.
And I think some people did it, right? Some people did it. And then some people, just like you and me, say, well, what are we supposed to do now? Right. You know, and I have to tell you, during the pandemic, not to say there were a lot of other things, emotional stuff, what it was like to have to hunker down, all of those things. Of course, there was that. But from a business point of view, as in how much money you made, that didn't change for me, because I could still do whatever I was doing, right? And then you just pivoted like some of the other things. So I think that looking at the things and listening to the questions that people ask, sometimes people listen to the questions and then they just, well, I know, doesn't that suck? And, whatever. Or you could say, wow, I bet a lot of people say that. I should probably come up with a solution for that, because we have all these other skills, right? So really, you had skills on SEO. You had skills on all these other things. So it wasn't like you were just like the super newbie, didn't know anything. This was just a new project per se, using the skills that you already had, right? So I think that is kind of really important. But I love, in the time that I've known you, I've only known you for a year, but in that time, I have evolved even more and more and more, as have I, right? But I think that's the name of the game.
Yes.
Guess what? Everything else is evolving. So either you lean into it and see, not every single thing is going to be the thing for your business, but you have to lean into it and be able to be decisive and say, nope, this isn't going to help me. This isn't what I want to do. Oh, this tool will, and either do it or hire someone, like one or the other. And that's the name of the game. And I think that having the ability now, again, it goes back to what we were talking about before, about that know, like, trust factor. Because when you get to the point, you're like, well, you know what? I don't know how to do that. Like that part. Like, you know what I mean? Like, have somebody else do it for you. Right? You know what I mean? And so for me, I'm very, very clear that there are things that I don't know how to do, but could learn, but don't want to, or I just don't want to do them. Right? That just doesn't bring me joy. And I love it when I have built a relationship with somebody that I can come to and just say, you know what, how can I make this better? Oh yeah, that's great. And then hire them. And then I can feel really good because I've already built a relationship. And I think you built your relationships that way. You built your business that way. And that's why you're so successful.
Well, do you know what? When I first started the podcast, it wasn't it wasn't because I wanted to start a podcasting business. It was because I wanted to network, because we're in a pandemic and I still need to talk to people, right? I didn't want to have to sit in front of the mirror and talk to myself. That's not a thing, right? Unless it is, I don't know. But I was like, I want to be able to network with people and talk with people and build my network, even from the comfort of my own home. And that's how I was able to build my network and build a relationship, because I just used that time to get to know as many people as possible. And at the same time, build my podcast.
Exactly. Now, I'm going to take everybody right now to the conversation where we talked about earlier about you and I having that 4-hour breakfast. This was my favorite topic that we talked about. And it was an eye-opening one for me, because this wasn't my area of expertise in this one thing. And when I sat across from you and you said what I'm going to say right now, I was like, what? And then because we had built a relationship, you broke it down for me, where some people would have been like, it's not like you can go buy a book on everything or take a course or whatever, right? Sometimes really shorten the learning curve and just hire someone, right? But I remember this conversation very clearly. And as soon as I say this, you're going to be like, yep, I remember. So I remember when we were talking about YouTube, we were talking about having a podcast website, or whether you just put it up on your own website on a page, or did you just create a one-pager? Like, I remember those things. And I remember asking you, how can we maximize, right? How can we maximize our content to get the best cross-platform promotion and increase visibility? And which platform should we be on? And what tactics are the most effective? I remember hammering that one too. It was like rapid fire. Wait. I want to know. I'm a marketer, right? I was like, wait. So tell me what you're saying is, and when you were telling me the pros and cons versus, really not the cons, but basically what your opinion was of, here's how you could do it this way. And if you did it this way, these are the things that you're going to need to do. If you decide to do it this way, these are the things you're going to do. And I remember going home and really, really thinking long and hard which one of those options I wanted. I think I even called you back up and said, wait a second, can we go back to that question again before I made my decision? But I have to tell you, I remember that day thinking to myself, wow, this girl really knows her stuff. And this is a really, really important question. Not only is it an important question, but it also could set the tone for what you do after that.
Absolutely.
So I really would love it if we could kind of not really reenact the question, but I think it was really important. So really cross-promoting, and what platform should you be on, and how to cross-platform promotion.
Yeah.
So not just cross-promote, but cross-platform promote, and what are the best tactics to use for that? This is the key question. And I have to tell you, there's going to be another goal that she's going to say, because I've already heard her answer. So this is it, folks. So you really want to pay attention here. Lean in.
So, all right, before we go into all that a little bit deeper, I just want to explain to people again where I talk about future-proofing, right? Mm-hmm. This is one of the things, because the way I see digital assets, or the way I see all digital assets is the more you have them, the more it's going to build value to your business, right? That's why you should have a podcast, right? That's why you should have courses. Now, when it comes to having your podcast and promoting it on a website, I always say have a separate website for your podcast, okay? Now, that's because you're going to have to buy a different domain. Again, domain is a digital asset, which is going to build to your business. It's going to build more value, right? Having as many different digital assets is going to build to it, right? So, and you always want to have the domain that's the same name as your podcast, right? With the keyword, remember SEO, with the word podcast at the end.com, right? So, for example, my podcast is called Make Your Mark. My domain that I bought for my podcast website is called makeyourmarkpodcast.com, right? The word podcast is a massive keyword, right? So you want to do that first. And so then you want to then create your separate website for your podcast. And I do use a separate system for this, a different platform that's so easy, right? You don't need coding. You don't need to hire anyone. And it works super, super well, because the person that created it just for podcasters. And he used to work for Google for 20 plus years and understands the power of SEO. which means he has implemented everything that needs to be implemented for SEO on this platform. So you don't need to learn. You just need to put the information on there. Okay.
Well, are you going to tell him what the platform is?
So maybe. Should I?
Yes, let's tell him.
It's actually called Podpage. Okay.
Podpage.
Yes. Podpage. And so this will just create the entire, it's got the templates and everything. You just put your branding colors. And what's super, super great is that you can actually connect it to your podcast hosting platform. Then it will actually automatically upload all of your episodes every time it's released. Okay. So it really is hands off, and they're getting better and better because they've implemented AI and all sorts of things to this platform as well. Okay. So that's where you want to go to build your own podcast website. Now, the reason you want to do this, because I know people just generally place another page on their website. And if you want to, you can do that, but that's not what I teach. And the reason for this is because you want to be able to play. You want to play, right? You want to play when it comes to all the different assets that you got. And you want to make sure people are clicking on all the different websites that you have, because that will gain more traffic. SEO loves this, right? And again, it's organically going to help you shoot up on the Google pages. Okay. Now, what you do here is, for example, you have your own business page, right? Have a separate page that says podcast, like most people do, but this time you're redirecting it to the other domain, to your podcast website. On your podcast website, you want to have another page that directs them to your main business, right? Because what happens if they land on your business website, they're going to be checking out your website. They're going to see, oh, she has a podcast or he has a podcast. Click on it, go onto the other website. They go onto the podcast website, or they end up there first. They're going to see, oh, she has a business, right? There's a whole other thing that she's involved in or he's involved in. And they're going to go to your business website. All of a sudden, right, you're having all this traffic where they're going back and forth. Now, this is the reason why you want to have blogs as well, okay? Because on your blogs, you can add links. You can add links to your podcast. You can add links to your business website. You can add links to your YouTube channel. Again, what's happening? You're cross-promoting on different platforms, which SEO absolutely loves. Take advantage of it, because this is absolutely free. Once you understand, this is just a game, right? You're taking people to all these different places. It's a game, but it's a game that works organically to get you rising up on the Google ranking and being on the top pages. Is absolutely a game changer.
Now, that's really good, but I want to, so I'm actually going to ask a clarifying question.
Okay.
So a lot of times people on their website, they do have a page that's for the podcast. I do too. Mm-hmm. So is what you're saying is that you could go to this pod page, this is what you told me while we were there too, and get your podcast there, but then on your podcast page that you want to have on your website, you could just make that be a blog. So that's the blog, and your podcasts are in the blog. And when they do, it just takes them to the other one. But when you're actually having all the verbiage and all the words, you're getting SEO for that as well, because you're optimizing it right there. But then when they just go to listen or watch it and they click the link, then they go to the other thing. So you are going back and forth. So you're getting SEO on both of them. That's what you're saying.
Absolutely. Yes. Exactly.
Clear that's watching that's clarity there. So I think that's important. So I love that. When you told me that, I was like, what? I remember, like, I was stopped in my tracks and I was like, what? Wait a second. And when you said it, man, my marketing brain just went, oh, ding, ding, ding. Like, that is so important. I was like, wow, that right there is gold. Like, I mean, it's like money in the bank right there. That one thing right there. So we will have the button below for pod page. We will. And hey, if you're an affiliate of that, because hey, this is the world we live in, make sure you get a link to it.
Promote it. Of course. It's business.
Of course. Okay. So let's kind of talk about, crafting compelling content, right? Because you really always want to make sure that we are doing content, right? So I think that is really, really important to make sure that we have content that keeps them coming back more and more. It's going to improve your audience engagement, especially if you want to have a global audience, right?
Yeah.
So what are some sustainability practices for long-term success, right? And relevance? Because, there's like some statistic that says that most people who start a podcast don't even do any more than 10 episodes or something.
It's less than that now. It's like 3.
Yeah. So, if you really want to sustain it, long-term success, and you want to monetize it and have a global audience, there's got to be some practices that you really put into play to make sure. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So I have found a lot of this as well, right? Like people start it. And one of the things I found is that they don't realize how much work or commitment is involved with having a podcast, right? And they just think, oh, everybody else is doing it. Like I can do it too. It's a long-term commitment. It's a relationship. It's a marriage, right? That's what it is. And so I always say to people, there's 3 questions you need to ask yourself to see if you are ready to launch your own podcast. Okay. Now, the first question is, why do you want to launch a podcast? What's the reason, right? If you're just going to tell me, oh, because everybody else is doing it. No, that's not a good enough reason, right? Like really think about what you want to get out of it. Are you in it for the long term, right? Do you really know what's involved? If you don't, then that means you need to go and do some research. You need to talk to podcasters that are doing it, right? The second thing I always ask people is, what kind of podcast do you listen to? Patty, you would be surprised how many people say to me, I've never listened to a podcast. I'm like,
really all that surprised.
And I'm like, well, if you've not listened to a podcast, that means you don't really know what a podcast is about or what it is. And so how are you going to start a podcast, right? That you need to actually be familiar with how a podcast works. And then the third thing I say to them is, how many guests have you been on? Sorry, how many podcasts have you been on as a guest, right? And so a lot of them said, oh, I've not done that either. Sorry, but you're not ready to launch a podcast if you don't listen to one, if you don't know why you want to do it, and if you've never been a guest, right? If it's a no with every single one of them, then you're not ready to launch a podcast. All 3 of them need to be yeses for you to know that, okay, I'm now ready for the next step. And when you are guesting on a podcast, I don't mean just 1 or 2. Like I would say at least 20 shows that you've been a guest on for you to actually understand how it all works, right? And with this, when you're guesting on other people's show, you get to see the different systems, the different processes that they use. And through that, you'll start understanding, oh, okay, this is how a podcast works. And then you'll understand, do I want to do all this or don't I, right? Before you commit to doing it, putting the work in, right? Getting 3 episodes out there and then being like, oh my goodness, this is too much hard work. I don't want to do it. That was a waste of time.
That makes sense too. But I think sometimes people don't even understand that there are many formats too. You know, sometimes people are like, oh, I just only want to do solo ones, or I just want to interview guests, or there's a lot of different ways to do it too. And so I think that is really important. So I think asking those questions really makes a lot of sense. And while she's not leaving yet, I do want to tell you that in a few more minutes, she actually has a gift for you that pretty much is like 14 days to launch. So if anybody's there, she's going to actually take you through that whole process and she's going to give it to you for free. So, you want to stay for that. And if you are listening to this already, there's a button below for that too. But I have to tell you, you're super generous. And I think that's really wonderful that you are going to share that with them too. But again, I really do want everybody to know that, yes, you do help people launch. You do that, but that's not all you do. So people who already have a podcast, maybe they're not making the money. Maybe they're struggling to get the right guests. Maybe they're not optimized. Maybe it's not showing up right in SEO or whatever. And they're just overwhelmed and struggling. Those are people who I think should talk to you too, because really that can be shifted. It doesn't mean that just because it's not working now, it won't work. They just need to have somebody who knows what they're doing to help them.
Absolutely. And so what we do, we actually help people do an audit. We do an audit, and I do it personally myself, right? Whether you're guesting or whether you're launching your podcast or thinking about it, we can get on a conversation. And I'm one of those people, you know this, Patty, already. If you're not ready, I'm going to tell you you're not ready.
Oh, she will tell you.
Right? But instead of just telling you you're not ready, I'm going to say to you, right, all the things that you need to do, the steps you need to take in order to get to that point, right? So I might even say to you, right, you know what, I don't feel like you're ready to launch a podcast. I feel like you need to start getting booked on more podcasts, right? These are the type of podcasts I can see you being on, right? Mm-hmm. And, you know, these are some of the steps in order to find the right podcast, or this is how you can look for the right podcast, right?
Exactly.
So we'll do a full-on audit to see where you are, where you want to get to, and strategize a whole map as to how you can actually get there.
See, I think that is really powerful because you know what? Knowing that you're not ready is one thing, but the question really is, what do I need to do to get ready? And if you're more seasoned, even if you're not getting the results you want now, just means that you don't have to scrap the whole thing. You just need to shift, right?
That's right.
And I think that is really important. So speaking of shifting, kind of, let's talk about trends, right? You know, you talked earlier on, you know, that, you know, we need to be able to be future proofing. So what trends do you see shaping the future of podcasting? And how can both new and seasoned podcasters stay ahead of the curve to maintain their competitive edge? And what role do you see emerging technologies like AI and Web3? And how are they changing the listening behaviors in this evolution? Now, I know that was a big question right there, so you can break it down however you want, but really, honestly, I believe that there are trends. We have talked about this, you and I, but because you were talking about future proofing, really, you don't want to be you want to be an early adopter, not somebody who's trying to catch up. So share with us some of the trends you see that are shaping it, both new. How do you stay ahead of the curve and ahead of, to get that competitive edge? And what role do you see all these emerging technologies in that approach that you're going to need to do to evolve?
So before we even get to technology, right, the biggest thing, and I think this is one of the common mistakes people make again and again, is they try to be something that they're not because they feel like this is what you're supposed to be and that's how everybody else shows themselves up as, and this is what you need to do as well. No, like I want you to be so raw, so real, right? So uncut, so unfiltered, just be you, right? This is how you're going to get a bigger audience, just saying it how it is, right? Not giving a toss about anyone else, anything else, because the people that actually love you are going to come and chase you down. They're going to want more of you, okay? And all that doesn't like it, that's fine. You just filter them out, right? It's all good. But that's the biggest thing, right? And Patty knows this too. You guys follow Patty. You know she is real, right? She's a real thing. She's going to say it how it is too. But this is how you build your audience. But you want to take it to another level, right? I'm going to give you a couple of secrets here. So one of the things that I've noticed in the podcast industry that people don't do, and that is build communities, or don't do very well, build communities around their guests, right? So what I mean by this is a lot of guests come onto shows, right? You build the camaraderie, you build the relationship, you have a really awesome episode, and then they get forgotten about, right? So I'm like, this is a missed opportunity because you get to have all these people on your show, right? You get to know who they are, what they do, and then that's it. You don't hear from them again. So build a community around every single guest that you have on your show. Keep in contact with them. Build a private networking group so you can always find out what new projects are they doing, how you can help, how they can help you, right? And when you have all your guests, right, with different skills, you'll be surprised on how powerful that can be, right? So this is one of the ways to build a community. You already got the people. You don't have to go chase them. They're already there. Let's build a community around it and bring a long-term relationship.
I'm all about community.
Right? And then one of the biggest things, right, I'm looking at, and this is where technology will come into it as well, is gamifying. I love playing games, Patty. You know this, right? We love playing games. I mean, have you heard of a game show called Crystal Maze?
Nope.
You have? Okay, in the UK, this is game show Crystal Maze. Now, they created a whole live one so you can go and play, right, in real life. And I did that last week. It was so much fun, right? Now, I'm a big kid, right? I'm a massive kid, right? And I love playing games. And I'm like, well, so does everybody else. that's what makes it fun. Business should be fun. Podcasting should be fun. And so you want to gamify this, right? And have rewards and have like a scorecard and have all these different things where you allow people to do certain things to see, just like a game when you're playing an actual game, right? You might kill 10 zombies and win a new weapon, right? Like you want to put all these things in place. Now, this is going to be a game changer when Web3 comes in, right? Because it's going to be all about gamification. Now, some of you may have heard of NFTs, non-fungible tokens. Now, the easiest way to explain what these are is like digital forms of baseball cards, right? So they're collectibles. Now, with this, what you can do is every time you give them a task and they complete it, they get rewarded with one of these tokens. And why would they want this? Because it could be a limited edition. It'll be valued a lot. So what that means is they can have this, they can keep it and see as the value goes up, or they can swap it with another digital token, sell it. They make money. You make money on royalties as well, right? So there's this whole different aspect that's coming about, and it's all going to be on cryptocurrency, gamification, and building communities on decentralized platforms. And decentralized, a lot of people may not know about that, but is on platforms that you 100% control, so it can never get shut down because you control that platform, unlike Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn or any of those that you don't control.
Now, that's really, really important. So is that secret 1, 2, or 3, or are we on 2 or 3 now? You put them all together.
I did. I totally did.
It's okay. You gave us all the secrets. I love that. That is really wonderful. I have to tell you, I think this has really been fabulous. So let's talk about the gift that you have. So this 14 days to launch, kind of tell us a little bit about the gift, and then we could tell people how they can get it.
Right. 14 days to launch. What I've noticed, and we mentioned this earlier, is making sure that you have your foundations, the basic knowledge of what needs to be done to build a successful podcast. Because what I find is there's a lot of gaps, right? Because what you don't know, you just don't know, right? And so you may put some things in place, but then there's other things missing that you don't know about. And all of a sudden, this podcast that you started and wanted to build isn't working the right way. That's because there's gaps. That's because you haven't got the foundations on point. And so this downloadable, this free gift is going to show you what you need to think about, the basics. And it's just 5 steps, right? 5 steps on what you need to do to actually build the right foundations of your podcast so you can then move forward and build it successfully. And a lot of these points are things that people miss or it goes over their heads. So you're going to have it in plain English, bullet points. It's going to be something that you're going to be able to implement straight away and start building on your podcast right now today.
And what's the website for that?
14daystolaunch.com.
Perfect. Now, here's what I love about it. So obviously, I've already looked at it. So what I think is really great about it is just like in business. So I really like applying this to other things, right? So, a lot of times people open up a business and, they're in business a year or two. And all of a sudden they realize they have these gaps that they didn't do these fundamental things in the beginning, right? And they're like, oh, wow, that, I didn't learn about that. I just did my business. Maybe they started making money right away and, they just didn't do those things, right?
Right.
What I love about this is, yes, if you want to start a podcast, here's 14 days to launch. But it's really a great way to kind of audit what you've done so far. So maybe if your podcast isn't quite as successful as you would like it to be, maybe you could go back and look at those steps and say, oh, wow, like I missed this step, or I could fine tune this step a little bit better because they listened to the podcast and all this great information that you shared. Now they could go, oh, wait a second, I could do better at this. And so it's not too late, right? So whether you're new and want to launch a podcast, or whether you just want validation that you've been doing it right, or maybe you just want to see if there's a gap that maybe you could do better, all of those things. I think this is a fabulous gift, and I really appreciate you giving it. So you're a great guest. So thank you so much, Kay. And
thanks for having me. This was such an awesome conversation.
It really is. It's been really wonderful for me. And so I know that they're going to want to be able to get a hold of you. What's the best way for them to connect with you and get a hold of you?
Honestly, if they get the downloadable, they'll be able to get access and know where I'm at on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, and also they'll be able to get an invitation to a free community, podcasting community that we have that gives more tips, more strategies on Facebook. So if they go there, they'll be able to find out a lot more information about me, and you'll also maybe have an opportunity to get on a call with me.
Now that's pretty awesome. So we'll make sure that you want to go to her website as well, which is makeyourmarkagency.com. And she already told you her podcast is makeyourmarkpodcast.com. We will have all the buttons below. So if you're listening to this already, you will already see those buttons. So we have a lot of things there for you to be able to grab some really great information. So I really would tell you that, hey, I had a conversation with her. It was like 4 hours, right? So I had to tell you, and I continue to have conversations with her. And there's, get to know her because you're going to see her a lot in my world for all the things that we're working on that we're going to do together. So I love it. I just got booked on your podcast this morning too, by the way. I
didn't see. I know. I didn't look into that.
I thought that was super funny. So yes. So I love that. Thank you so much for being here with me today, Kay. I really, really appreciate it. And you're just the best. So I appreciate it.
You're the best. Thank you for the opportunity.
And to my audience, thank you so much for being here today and every week when you tune into our show. We really love it. So we want to say thank you so much. And if you enjoyed today's episode, and I'm sure you did, please make sure to like, subscribe, and review it on your favorite listening platform. And make sure that you check out our magazine too at m3digitalmag.com. Thank you so much for being here. We'll see you next week. Bye now.
Thank you for joining us today on the Marketing, Media, and Money podcast. To shorten your learning curve even more, make sure to grab your free copy of the Marketing, Media, and Money magazine at m3magazine.com. That's M3magazine.com. I promise your business will thank you.